Hello and welcome back to Development Adelaide. Now, this is a bit of a special episode. I'm going to be focusing on Melbourne Street and what my ideas are for renewal of this very important street down in North Adelaide. And I'm also going to be going through some of the things that have happened since I last took a look at this area. So a little bit of background on this project that I've been doing. So I first did a university assessment on this in 2017, which was a review of Melbourne Street and its surrounding areas. The main focus of the project was the Kentish Arms policy area, which is sort of the northern corner of Melbourne Street. Now, obviously, policy areas don't exist anymore. They have a slightly different way of doing those things in the new planning and design code. Yeah, it's mainly focused on that top area. Now, there was a bit of other things in that project, such as heritage and conservation and business. My focus at the time was in relation to transport. So just for the sake of this project, I'm going to be focusing on that again, looking at cars, public transport and active transport. So a bit of a context to show you where the site actually is. So as you can see there on the screen on the left, it's in North Adelaide, and it's in the vicinity of Melbourne Street. And if you look on the right hand side, that little map, you can get a bit of idea of where that actually is. So it's very much in the top corner of that part of North Adelaide. And here's a slightly different view of the area. So you can see there the area is surrounded by Park Terrace to the east. You've got Melbourne Street on the south, West Palum Street on the west, and to the north you've got Stanley Street. So this map here shows a bit of an overview of the final plan that we decided on. So there's quite a few elements to this. Now I'm going to focus first of all on cars and trucks. Towards some of the restaurants and hotels, there will be some loading zones. Currently some of them are not. They're actually parking areas, I believe. But yeah, if they were more focused on loading zones, so unloading goods, and just making sure it's used for just those commercial purposes, that would make it easier for those people to find those car parks. Permit parking for residents on Sussex Street, which you can see just there. So on that street there, it's quite narrow, so you'd only want a certain amount of cars parked there. And because a lot of these houses don't have parking garages, it's very important that they have some sort of space there to park. Moving on to the next one, there's a dedicated right turn lane into East Palum Street, and that allows for the traffic to move through, because in this plan, this street here has actually been turned from a two-way street to a one-way street, and that's just to facilitate movements around the area. This one is currently heading north as one way, but in this proposal it's heading south, and that's sort of to keep the traffic flow happening through there, and also helps with the kindergarten in the corner. You've also got some on-street parking to remain. That's very important to some of the businesses. It's a very much a visual thing, especially for drivers, to make sure that they do have some parking space there. And like I said before, the kindergarten drop off and pick up zone there, just to make sure those kids can safely get to the parents and get picked up safely. And also there's also a plan for speed limit management. So that's using variable signs that you can turn up and turn down as required for any events that are happening, or just for any day or night trade. And we'll go into that a little bit further later on. Now, just explaining here, so the loading zones and permit parking is important for those who really need it. So the permit zone is for those residents, and that's along Sussex Street, and those loading zones next to the Kentish Arms and the Mediterranean Mezze restaurant. Just a bit of a side note there, I think that Mediterranean Mezze restaurant has actually closed down in the last couple of months due to COVID, so that's a bit sad to see. Well, it's currently for lease, so we'll see what happens in that area. And just a bit of an image there of the hotel area. As you can see, it already has a loading zone, so again, it's all about reviewing that space, making sure it's used as appropriately as possible. And then we've got West Palum Street here. Again, very barren and not a lot of greenery here. Mind you, this was in 2017, and I'll update you on what's been happening there since then. But yeah, just very much just a sea of asphalt and not very nice to look at. Okay, just to focus on that East Palum Street entry. So it allows traffic to continue flowing on Melbourne Street, and it only has a small component of parking that would have to be removed. It also decreases the amount of crash risk in the area, and yeah, just make sure that the area can be entered into safely, especially since that area of North Adelaide is very difficult to get in and out of because of all the dead-end streets in that area. And just go back on that speed limit. So our proposal at the time was for a 40 km/h speed limit between 9 AM and 9 PM, and then 50 km/h at other times. Now that's mostly to facilitate those traders having a less noisy and less it's more desirable to have those lower speed limits, especially in a shopping area just like Melbourne Street, and it will calm the traffic. Now, this example I've got here on the left is an example from Melbourne. I believe that's from Sydney Road, and they use that very, very often in those areas where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of pedestrian movement, and of course also the trams that go along those main streets in Melbourne. And also one more thing, now because there's a lot of on-street car parking there, it can, and because a lot of people actually utilize that on-street parking, it's also very important to still encourage customers to come to those businesses, because even though they might have their on-street car parking full, it's very important to properly point out where those extra car parking spaces are. So one of the ideas to show those hidden car parking spaces and show that availability and have that cognitive change with those customers is to have parking counters. So that can be facilitated using a different range of methods. You can look at grants or co-investments between council and business, and you can also include that in things like planning policy, make that a mandatory thing to be part of all existing or future businesses. Now let's look at public transport. So public transport it's very much a key route. It's got quite a few bus routes going down Melbourne Street, which is great because it allows a lot of customers to go there from all different parts of the northeastern suburbs. So we'll just go through a bit of a list about these changes that we've included here. So the first one is better access to stop 6. Now stop 6 is just where that little marker is. It's very difficult to access that part of that bus stop there, particularly for people who do live in that little corner here in North Adelaide. So having that access from public transport is very important. So that can be very minor. That could be just a matter of providing a footpath, because there is actually quite a big mound on that side of actually a bit of as a noise barrier. So adjusting that to allow access would be one of the solutions that we proposed. We also proposed a dedicated peak hour bus lane, not for Melbourne Street itself, but more for the entry to Melbourne Street. So just that whole line there. There are currently 2 lanes that turn right from Park Terrace. and having that extra bit of space for buses during peak hour will make bus transport much more desirable and encouraging people to use those options rather than taking their car. There's also a lot of areas that do not have a dedicated bus stop area, so they're just in the middle of the road. Now that will cause things like congestion for the other vehicles using the road, and also can be a bit of a safety hazard as well. So that would have to be designed and put into the street alignment, having a bit of an area for those buses to pull into those stops. Also, the other proposal we had was to use digital bus stops and having more shelters. So that's also, again, a cognitive change. We'll go through that in a couple of slides as well. And the last thing was to review and align the timetables, as they are currently a bit out of whack. And unfortunately, it remains the same these days. Okay, just going into the peak hour bus lane that I was talking about here. So be a model very similar to other bus lanes around Adelaide. So you've got a 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Peak hour. At the point when we were doing the project, there were 37 buses travelling along Melbourne Street towards the city, and allowing those buses to bypass the traffic would allow traffic to, especially the bus traffic, to flow better. Now, also it would encourage people to travel to by public transport to Melbourne Street, and also allow for future growth in the inner suburbs around the inner northeastern suburbs. As you can see there, this is again from 2017. So you can see the bus there stuck along that slip lane from Park Terrace, heading into Melbourne Street, and yeah, it's just caught up in all that traffic. So it took quite a long time for that bus to actually go through. I was actually watching it from the inside of that median strip and just watching it crawl by. So any improvement there would be good for the system. Again, there you go. They've got a map there of stop, or not a map, but an image of stop 5. So again, like I said, it's quite it's jagging out of the road. It's not really protected, or it's not really flowing well with that traffic. So having a bit of a space there just for the bus would make it a lot easier for the traffic. And also integrates with that peak hour bus lane from Man Terrace. Okay, and this is another image there of the bus stop. And as you can see there's 2 buses there, and they're all sort of stopping at that particular location, but they're holding up the traffic while they're doing that at that time. There's a bit of awkward merging happening there. And digital bus stops. Now these are actually the old digital bus stops they used to have along Grove Street. There's new ones that have actually been installed along not Grove Street, but Curry Street and Grenfell Street, and a few other locations around the city, and also the suburbs. Actually, some of the interchanges have those now as well. So having a bigger bus stop location there actually would encourage people to see it, and having those travel times and the departure times listed on there would actually allow people to see, oh, there's a bus coming in 5 minutes, you know what, I'm going to catch the bus instead of driving by car to my location. So again, it's just that cognitive fix of encouraging people to use that service. And as you can see there's the bus stop number 4. That's, again, like I said, taken in 2017, and it looks not very inviting. You've got a timetable there, but you don't really have enough information, and it's not very prominent. So having that larger sign, the digital information, using that technology is just another way of encouraging people to use that service. Again, this goes back to 2017. So there's currently 3 GO zones that travel along this route. 202, 203, 206, 208, 271 and 273. Now they come from various parts of northern and northeastern Adelaide, and unfortunately, like a lot of the very frequent bus corridors, those timetables are just not aligned. Now, it is important to note that a lot of those corridors have very long routes, long travel, long journey times, and aligning all of them is very difficult. But um, at least they should make an effort to really try and align them to have a bit of a better um, frequency along the inner parts of that route. So as you can see there, that first group, the first group and the second group during weekdays, they come at the same time, and it's just having those two buses there at the same time. There's no point. You might as well have one coming a little bit later or a little bit earlier and just have that 5-minute spacing during weekdays, and that would be a much better service for the people living there. And again, the same thing on weekends. For example, that first group and the second group, 2 minutes apart, and then you have to wait a long time for the next one. So aligning all those together during the day and during the night, you would have a 5-minute frequency during weekdays, and on weekends and at nights every 10 minutes, and that's as good as the tram service really. So that could be a forebearer to any tram service in the future. And now moving on to active transport. So you're probably wondering what that big blob up here is. So that's actually a park that we integrated into the project. And this here is actually a bridge that sort of connects everything together and allows much safer access to Melbourne Street from across the road. So first of all, we've looked at upgrading some of the footpaths around there because some of them are quite uneven. We've got a bike boulevard proposed on Stanley Street because it is quite a wide street, and as you can see there, it would connect up with all those other bridges and other parts of the bike network. We've got a walking, cycling bridge over Man Road in that corner there, just to allow people to move in and out of that area. And we've got some curbless footpaths, which is a much better experience for pedestrians, and also especially those people who do have mobility issues. So that's very important, and also improved bike facilities as well in some of the locations there. And finally, just some new wayfinding signs as well, because there's not a lot of wayfinding in the area. So providing people with that information would encourage them to explore more, the other parts of Melbourne Street. Maybe they might just go to the one shop or the one pub along the street. Providing wayfinding signs, advertising, etc., would allow them to view Melbourne Street in a whole different light. Okay, so first of all, going on that bike boulevard. So there's actually quite a few bike connections in the area. Towards the south, you've got the connection to the Palum Street bikeway, which is still under construction as we speak, those last little bits. And also to the west, you've got that connection to the linear park. So, it's all about connecting not just the cars, not just public transport, but also connecting those bikeways as well, and allowing them also to have access, not just access, but also safe access to North Adelaide and Melbourne Street. And that's going to be better for businesses, especially considering that people who are on bikes and active transport, they're more likely to stop by and buy something in Melbourne Street compared to those just driving through. And a few ideas there along what it would look like. So those are from Flickr. So thank you very much to those authors that took those photos. But yeah, really just a few different design ideas we have. Again, it will complete that Torrens from to Torrens bikeway, I should say, and allows communities to connect over what we call Man Island, which is the little median strip inside the those two road directions there. Again, different ways of accessing that. You've got the ramp access for bikes and people who have mobility issues, and stair access for those who want to just zip up and down those stairs. And of course, that would also integrate with that green wall that we've got there along the street, along Man Terrace, and which is also that sound barrier I was talking about before. Curbless footpaths, you can see them quite often in the Adelaide CBD. They've become quite prominent these days. This one is just from Lee Street. It allows a smoother experience for pedestrians and just acts as a bit of also a slow down indicator for drivers, to show that yes, there are pedestrians that come across here, and it's also very important for those who have different mobility needs and also the aged. And yeah, also some bike facilities and storage, so making sure people can actually, if they have issues with their bike, they can repair them quite quickly. And there's an example there to the left. And again, it's all about increasing the confidence, using the bike boulevard, using the tools. It just gives people more assurance that they can reach the destination even if they are going on their bike. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few updates about what's changed since that project was completed in 2017. So there's 3 main elements I'm going to go through, so we'll just go through those now. So the main one is the Botten and Bowser development, which is located along Melbourne Street. Now this is a 7 to 8 story building, about 27-30 meters tall. Once it's completed, as you can see, it's reaching pretty much its completion height, and it features apartment living, so it's going to be a bit of a boost to Melbourne Street. And having more of these examples of that really good architectural style is going to be a benefit to Melbourne Street and also the traders. The main thing also you have to remember is North Adelaide is a bit more of a conservative area in some senses. It is also quite historical, so it's very important to make sure that the designs of these buildings integrate well within the existing community and not to go too crazy with those heights. West Palum Street actually received a few rain gardens, so remember you might remember that photo to the right there that I showed before. So now they've introduced a few rain gardens there, and that is just another way of recharging the aquifers, the local drainage areas, and also prevents flooding as well, and prevents flash flooding from overwhelming the stormwater system. So that's very much a very recent idea that the City of Adelaide has been doing, and also other councils across Adelaide. So that's really great to see some more greenery in those streets. And finally, there's a Labor election pledge to reactivate Melbourne Street. Now, I haven't heard much about this at all, and when I was looking up information about this on their website, there wasn't anything I could see. So if you do know more about this project or what they're proposing, just include that in the comments below, and I'll follow that up at a later stage. Obviously the election's coming up in the next 4 weeks, so hopefully we'll get some details about what they're proposing very soon. And thanks for watching this video about Melbourne Street and what my ideas are for this street. Again, it's been really interesting to revisit the site that we visited first in 2017 and see what's happened since then. It's really good to see some of those developments coming up, like that Bowser and a Botten and Bowser development that's happening there. So hopefully some of those projects will keep coming. Now we've got a few upcoming videos still to come, and I covered these in the last video, but I'll just cover these here again. So we've got another update on Flagstaff Road that's coming up very shortly. We've got a update on the Port Rush and McGill Road intersection, as well as the north-south corridor in full. So I'll do another complete run all the way from Old Noarlunga to Gawler, and also I'll be doing a update on the Port Wayfield Highway up there, which is the old crash corner that they've just sort of started opening up. Now, coming events, we've got the Dominator design reveal. So that's that very, very tall building. I think it's 170 meters or so. That design will be very interesting to see. Hopefully it's a really beautiful design that really does, its title justice, because it will be the tallest building in Adelaide. And other things also happening will be the Gawler line reopening, hopefully towards April or so at this stage. And we've got the 2 big federal and state elections coming up in the next couple of weeks or months. Now, if you do like this video, please like it. If you do like all the content I've been putting up, please subscribe. And if you have any feedback, please, I'd love to hear the feedback, because I'd like to see what you guys want to want to see in the future? Do you want to see more about developments in Adelaide? Do you want to see more about the infrastructure changes? Or do you just simply want to see what my ideas are for different parts of Adelaide and how I would address them? So that feedback is always very, very valued. So thanks everyone for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. So goodbye for now.